All Saints Church, repeat after me. Come back. Come out. Come on. Let's do that again. Let's do it louder. Come back. Come out. Come on. Okay, one more time. Really shout it out. Come back. Come out. Come on. Okay, sit on down. Come back. Come out and come on. That is our charge as All Saints Church for such a time as this. I got to tell you, it is a charge as ancient as the scriptures we read this morning. It is a charge as familiar as the words of George Regas we say before every Eucharist. It is a charge as fresh as the newest one of you to come through these doors or to tune in online. Come back, come out, and come on. We are living in unprecedented times. That's what we keep hearing, right? But seriously, when haven't we been? I mean, John Lennon sang, "Nobody told me there'd be days like these, strange days indeed," but really, I think John just wasn't listening too well. Because all our mamas, and our mamas' mamas, and our mamas' mamas' mamas, and more have seen some mighty strange days. It was strange days for Jesus and the disciples when they gathered on that mountaintop and Moses and Elijah appeared before them, and instead of letting them stay in that place of nostalgia and safety, Jesus told them, it's time to come back down that mountain and face the Romans and your own people who want to imprison and kill you. Those are some pretty strange days. It was strange days for All Saints Church in the early 1970s when the nation was being torn apart, as it still is, by what Dr. King called the three evils of society: poverty, racism, and militarism. And George Regas took a stand against the war in Vietnam, and a group formed in this congregation called Save All Saints, and urged people not to give to the church in an effort to force him out as rector. And yet now we view our opposition to that war as one of the defining times in our congregation's history. Strange days indeed. And it is strange days for All Saints Church now. Whoo boy! It is strange days for All Saints Church now as we struggle with a call to become Christ's multiracial, multicultural, multilingual, multi-gender, multi-fill-in-your-own-blank beloved community in a world that is more polarized and segregated than any time since Reconstruction, where the full implications of George Regas' call that all are welcome to an equal seat at Christ's table are becoming painfully evident to those of us who have had higher seats than others. It is strange days for All Saints Church as the so-called silent generation that, thank God, was never really that silent, that built so much of what we hold dear is gradually moving, as George would say, from pew to balcony in the communion of all saints. As the boomer generation that pushed and marched and fought for civil rights and gave so generously to support the work of All Saints Church is moving into retirement, but certainly not irrelevance. As millennials and Gen Zers are bringing with them more financial insecurity and debt than any generation in our nation's history, and yet, if the church will allow them, are also bringing new blood and new life into the church, challenging us to be not just a place, but a community that walks with the revolutionary Jesus, truly living out those qualifiers of our values: radical inclusion, courageous justice, joyful spirituality, and ethical stewardship. And if the church doesn't, that's okay, because they'll just go somewhere else and build their own. And if you notice that I didn't mention Gen Xers, that's okay, nobody else mentions us either. Any other fellow Xers in the house? Yeah, okay. You all know what I'm talking about. That's because we're not the stars of the show, and that's okay too. We are the midwives trying to help the transition happen, and that's actually my job as your rector. And of course, it is strange days for All Saints Church as the pandemic has moved from crisis to chronic, leaving us unable to be the church we once were, and yet in some cases both longing for that past, for all that was good about it, and unsure, as always, about what the future holds. Strange days indeed. Most peculiar, Mama. And when the days get strange, the Holy Spirit, she clears her voice. She clears her throat, and the church hears her call, come back, come out, come on. First, come back. Now, if you're an athlete, the definition of a mixed blessing is winning the Comeback Player of the Year award. It means you've had a great year. You have exceeded beyond expectations, and it also means that you have endured something really hard that you had to come back from. Now, here's the thing about athletes. When they come back, they are never the same as they were before that injury or trial they had to endure. Sometimes they're worse, sometimes they're better. They are always different because the trial is a teacher, and age brings both new challenges and deeper wisdom. And here's the thing about comebacks. You actually have to come back. Peter, James, and John stood on that mountain and were happy just slipping into their PJs and watching Moses, Elijah, and Jesus entertain and enlighten them with their conversations. They were happy to be spectators, but Jesus said, no, we have to come back. We have to come back down that mountain and roll up our sleeves and get our skin back in the game. And so, All Saints Church, it is time to come back to this community in person. Yeah. Now I'm looking at you all right here in the camera. I know that some of you are unable because of either infirmity or distance to come back here in person, and I have a good word for you in a moment. And for the rest of you who are already here, and especially to those of you who are not, now is the time. We have gotten into new habits. We are still tired and traumatized from the pandemic and so many changes and losses. Sometimes coming back seems so hard, and streaming and Zoom is just almost as good. And yes, we are grateful for these technologies, and there is nothing that can replace being in the same place together, looking in each other's eyes, embracing each other and feeling that warmth, holding each other when we weep, and leaning on each other's shoulders as we laugh. All Saints Church, as you are able, it is time to come back. Many of you have, and you know what I'm talking about, and it is time for all of us to come back. So if you are out there and you can, get back in here. And if you're in here right now and you're saying, what do you want from me? It's 10 o'clock Sunday morning, the church is packed, and I'm sitting right here. Well, we get to get out there and bring our friends and family and everyone we meet back. If there's someone you ain't seen in a while, give them a call. Say, it's time to come back. Come on, I'll come with you. We got to, and we get to bring people back. Bring people in who have never even been here before. All Saints Church, say it loud. It's time to come back. That's right. And for those of you who are unable to get here physically for whatever reason, we need you to come back too. And it's going to look different. And we will be working with you to find ways that this community can be more than just something you watch on a Sunday morning. We will be together creating new ways of connecting and acting and loving online, and in some cases across the country and around the world in communities where you are, and we need you to come back too. You see, walking with the revolutionary Jesus is never a spectator sport, because as we come back, we are also going to come out. Now, All Saints Church has a long history of being a community where it was not only safe to come out, but where it was celebrated to come out. Many of you have come out in this community not only as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer. You have also come out as activists and artists, singers and dancers, theologians and prophets. You have come out as preachers and teachers, as counselors and caregivers, because coming out is discovering and becoming whatever and whoever you truly are. Coming out is claiming with pride and joy that we are more than just what we can produce. that we are more than the labels others might put on us, that each one of us has a deep beauty that needs not just to be tolerated, but demands to be celebrated. That each one of God's children, that you deserve nothing less than to come out and come fully alive as the beautiful person God created and is still creating you to be. All Saints Church, it is time to come back and it is time to come out. It is time for us to be an artist's colony. Not just for an outwardly talented few, but where every one of us can explore and become the artists, singers, dancers, actors, writers, and more that God the Creator creates us to be. It is time, yes, it is time for us to come out as fragile, grieving people who have tears we have been too afraid to shed in public for fear of being seen as weak. Come out in a community that follows Jesus' model of vulnerability as strength and love without judgment as the true golden rule. It is time for us to come out not just as accepting the presence of those among us who are transgender, but celebrating and embracing your leadership and lived expertise as people who know what it's like to become who you truly are for a church that is trying to become who we truly are. And it is time for us to come out, It is time for us to come out as unashamedly who we are, Black, Latino, AANHPI, Native, and yes, European, American, just like me, without the white supremacy that impoverishes us all. All Saints Church, as we have done throughout our history, once again, it is time to come back and it is time to come out. All Saints Church, say that loud. It is time to come back. It is time to come out. And that means it is finally time to say, come on. That's right. Now, come on is one of those phrases that can mean opposite things. It's like dusting. When I dust a cake, I'm adding something to it, but when I dust my dresser, I'm taking that away. So come on can be objection or encouragement. And it's time for both. Now, the first one, I know y'all know what I mean about this first one. How many of you have looked at your phone first thing in the morning and seen the latest atrocity that happened while you were sleeping, and your first reaction was, oh, come on? Anybody? Yeah, okay. As Chase said, you can raise your hands or you can just blink. I got you. We say, come on, when we see something that we just know shouldn't be. We say, come on, when we are so tired of it all and we just want it to stop. And we say, come on, when something deep in us will not let us be silent anymore. Come on is a prophetic cry, and it is in our DNA as All Saints Church. When we see a nation where the color of our skin and our zip codes do more than any other factor to determine our education, economic fate, and life expectancy, we say, come on. We see our city spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on new helicopters for the police and ShotSpotter, while our schools have to cut art and music and counseling programs, and we say, come on. We look at a world that continues to deny climate change, or perhaps even worse, accept its reality, but refuse to do anything about it, and what do we say? Come on. We look at a government that takes not just reproductive rights, but workplace rights, pay equity, and rights to safety from women, trans, and non-binary people, and we say, come on! And we live in a nation that sees gun ownership as a sacrament and education and healthcare as options, and what do we say? Come on! I gotta tell you, any church that is not saying, come on, any church who is not being the voice of protest against all that is unjust and loving is part of the problem and should disband right now and let someone else have their buildings who is willing to speak up, speak out, and do the work. And the good news is that is who we are as All Saints Church, and that's who we have always been in the living memory of this congregation. And we are not and we cannot rest on those laurels of the past. We have been and will continue to be a voice of come on in Pasadena, Los Angeles, and throughout the national and global church. But here's the thing, come on doesn't stop there, because there's another kind of come on. Come on is also a word of deep encouragement. One of the many gifts the historic black church gives us is that sermons are co-created conversationally with the preacher and the congregation. And so if the preacher is saying something that is resonating, something that is bold, something that needs encouragement and support, people in the congregation step up and say, come on, because it is never enough just to object. The first step is identifying that there is a problem, and we get to be a part of creating the solutions. And we never do that just by ourselves. We do that in relationships of mutual love and encouragement that transcend boundaries of faith, race, and politics. 2 weeks ago, a team of us visited Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, and Pastor Otis Moss III, one of the great faith leaders and preachers in this nation today, celebrated the possibilities of a partnership of mutual learning and encouragement with us and other progressive communities throughout the country by saying, if y'all are down with liberation, we are down with you. Come on is about finding partners in liberation for all God's children. About not just being concerned with surviving as a church in a difficult time for churches, but growing movements of liberation that are the church's very reason for being. And so if we go down this path together, not just with Trinity, but with other amazing communities, we can look at the amazing work like what Trinity is doing with their Community Development Corporation. And you're going to be hearing more about that, and welcoming new members into their community and speaking truth to power and using their iconography and stained glass windows to tell a more complete story of the revolutionary Jesus. And we can say, come on, and encourage and be encouraged by them. And those other communities can look at how we as All Saints Church are becoming even more a community where people of all genders and sexual orientations are not just welcomed, but celebrated, and where we are tackling head on the dehumanization of homelessness and lack of housing, where we are embodying joyful spirituality in new ways, and they can say to us, come on, and encourage and be encouraged by us. And just like come back and come out, this is nothing new for us. We have wonderful historic partnerships with faith communities like Leo Beck Temple and ICAR and the Islamic Center of Southern California, with organizations like Union Station, Day One, Friends Indeed, Young and Healthy, Planned Parenthood, and more. We have new and growing partnerships with Rabbi Heather Miller in Keeping It Sacred, and with the Reverend Dr. Will Gaffney and her brilliant scholarship. And they are all ways for us together to spot where the Holy Spirit is moving and say, come on, and encourage and support each other to create beloved community, not just in here, but in the world down the mountain to which God sends us. The best days of All Saints Church are not a topic of history and nostalgia. The most transformative days of this church are not something to be mourned at funerals for All Saints Church held at dinner tables of those who have left this community. God is doing new things, amazing things, healing things, challenging things, transformational things right here, right now, through us and through you. That's right, God is working through you. We walk with the revolutionary Jesus, and he ain't lounging around in his PJs. He is headed down that mountain, and we get to follow him. Heal and be healed, change and be changed, love and be loved. These are strange days, All Saints Church, but what else is new? And when the days get strange, that's when the church suits up. And the call of Christ is always the same. Come back, come out, come on. Say it with me. Come back, come out, come on. Louder, come on, come back, come out. Come on, one more time. Let them hear us in Florida. Come back. Come out. Come on. Hallelujah, amen. Whew.